Welcome to the Limitless Being podcast. I am Danielle Sharkey, your host, here to be a guide on this journey of life. This is a space cultivated with the intentions of connection, vulnerability, spirituality, limitless knowledge, explorative conversations, and unlimited potential. I am here to spread love while activating freedom within the collective consciousness. I'm a digital nomad, an entrepreneur, and a magnetic spiritual being here to help you activate your power so that you can cultivate the life of your dreams. This container I have created is a safe space for us all to have conversations which lead us toward liberation, acceptance, and radical love of yourself. If you have found this podcast, it is by no accident. You have been guided here because there's a part of you who's ready to stop making excuses and live the life you've imagined. So join me and my guests here every Thursday. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Limitless Being podcast. Today, I have Jason Stauffer. We actually originally interviewed him months ago when this podcast was The Shift Flow with Danny and Mo. And he has been able to see the evolution and the death and the rebirth of this podcast since then. Just a little background on Jason. He's a Phoenix native like myself. An Army combat veteran and an ASU graduate with his Bachelor of Science in Engineering, Civil, Environmental, and Sustainable Engineering. He has a background in healthcare analytics, game theory, and system analysis and optimization. Jason's early civilian career in for-profit pharmaceuticals gave him intimate knowledge of the decreasing ability of synthetic medicine to treat the underlying causes of diseases of aging, chronic ailments, and post-industrial afflictions of urban human society. And with that, please welcome Jason Stauffer, also president and CEO of Morozco Forge, which is an incredible ice bath company. So welcome back. Good to see you again.
Yeah, good to be here. Good to see you.
Yeah, of course. What I would like to start out discussing is just your evolution as a human. I mean, I met you in Austin in February, and what really drew me to you was your perspective on many things that we've talked about, which we'll get into, but also how you kind of started as like a theater kid, and then you evolved into an engineer, and then into a veteran, and now your amazing business with ice baths and wanting to treat and help people to heal their ailments from a root cause approach. So tell me about that evolution of yourself a little bit more.
Sure. So the order that you got it in was a little bit off. So it was, theater kid in high school.
Yes.
I remember I was sitting in my mom's apartment, and this is in the 90s. And so I didn't have a cell phone or anything like that, but the phone rang, and I was like a junior in high school, and I pick up the phone, and it was actually like an Army recruiter or military recruiter or something like that, who'd gotten my mom's phone number from whatever school records that the school gives military recruiters back then. I don't know. But it was like, hey, so I hear you're, graduating high school soon. Have you given any thought to the military? And at the time I was, just kind of a scrappy theater kid, I'm like, I told the guy, I'm like, only as an alternative to prison. And then by the time, I got out of high school, I did not graduate. I quituated high school my senior year, and for various reasons. That's a whole different podcast. And ended up, I'm 19 years old. I don't even have a high school diploma at that point. And I just really, I think looking back, I was just a kid, I didn't have like the ability to kind of synthesize my thoughts and my feelings like that back then. I was just a 19-year-old kid. But I really kind of sensed that I didn't have a whole lot of options. Like, what am I going to do with my life, And a buddy of mine walked in and said he was joining the Army. So I was like, all right, let's do that. And so I got my GED in a hurry, which wasn't difficult for me to do, which was a requirement for military enlistment. Enlisted in the military, spent about 6 years in the Army. Um, got out in 2005, and this is after I was in the 2003 invasion of Iraq. Got out of
Wow.
the military in 2005. Bartended for a couple of years before again thinking like, well, what the heck am I going to do with my life now? And so I found my way to college when I was like 29 years old on military education benefits, and ended up getting my degree in civil, environmental, and sustainable engineering. Graduated when I was in like my early 30s. I never went into civil
Engineering.
engineering as a
Mm.
career. I kind of fell out of love with that about my junior year of college. Because I thought it was going to be all roller coasters and skyscrapers. That's what civil engineers do, right?
Mhm.
No, it's a lot of parking lots and lampposts, and it just wasn't wasn't
Not
quite
fulfilling for your soul very
another
much?
billing,
Oh, okay.
and so that's, to make a long story short, that's how I ended up. I finished my degree. I'd gone through 80% of my education benefits. I'm not going to change my major then. So I finished my engineering degree, understanding that was still something valuable to have, and then started
Mhm.
looking for what's that next non-bartender job going to look like, and it just so happened to end up in pharmaceutical data analytics. That I put in resumes a lot of different places, every place that wasn't an engineering firm. Um, and that's just where I ended up. And that's what kind of started giving me this. It taught me the lingo. It taught me how to speak the terms of the pharmaceutical industry. It gave me some behind the scenes look about how pharmaceutical products are research
Mm.
developed, bought, sold, mergers, acquisitions, how they're marketed both to the consumer and to the providers, which are two different marketing channels and two very different messages. Something notable is that the United States, last I checked, is only one of two countries in the entire world that allows pharmaceutical companies to market directly to patients. And so I
Mm.
think the other one is New Zealand. And then it's been a long time since I looked at that. But if you think about that for a second, like these are pharmaceutical companies, they're selling medicines. Why, and we've all seen the pharmaceutical ads.
Mhm.
Then they're most ads, it turns out lately on commercial television, which I try not to watch, are pharmaceutical ads. And it's very standard. It's, here's a 65-year-old man who's very fit and healthy with his wife who's probably 10, 15 years younger than him, and they're walking on a beach and they're happy and they've got a golden retriever. And then, the tagline is, you try Pilesta for your blah, 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 blah. And so if you think about that for a second, for a drug company to be able to market directly to the patient,
Mm.
a little odd, right? Because the patient is just a patient. But we see that this is kind of what's gone into our prescribing culture in the United States is now the patients show up to their doctor's office and they already know what they want because the TV told them.
Mhm.
The TV says, "Hey, I want Pilesta." I just made that up, Pilesta, but I
Mhm.
want the Pilesta because I want to be the 65-year-old man with the silver hair and the 48-year-old wife and the golden retriever, and that's what the Pilesta is going to do for me.
Yeah.
And so, on a provider level, on a doctor level, yes, they're also getting marketed. They're getting a much different marketing message from the pharmaceutical companies. They're getting the more of the science and the study and the da 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 da. But it has the capacity of growing into this demand side problem where the patients
Right.
are demanding the pharmaceutical products. And if the patient goes to the doctor and says, "I want Pilesta," and the doctor says, "I don't think that's," but if let's say the doctor says, "You know what? I don't think that's quite right for you. I think what you need to do is get some exercise and cut out the carbs and the sugar." Then the patient's going to say, "Okay, you're not my doctor anymore. I'm going to go
Yeah.
find the doctor who gives me Pilesta," because again, the TV told me, and I'm satirizing and I'm paraphrasing here. The
Yeah.
TV told me that Pilesta will turn me into a 65-year-old silver fox with a 48-year-old wife and a golden retriever, and that's what I
Mhm.
want. And that's how I'm going to get it. And so, getting into the pharmaceutical industry and kind of looking at this industry and how it's come up is really a big part of what got me into seeking seeking the root causes of diseases and seeking the practices that we can get into, whether
Can I ask you really quick, was there something that you were personally struggling with, because clearly you were in that industry and you saw a lot of things that you didn't necessarily agree with? Was there something that you were personally struggling with that you really wanted to treat in a different way?
Well, it was my my wife and business partner, Adrian. She was going through. She developed some autoimmune conditions in her early 30s that were very rapid onset and very strange, and took her a long time to figure out. And ended up with a diagnosis for Hashimoto's hypothyroidism. So this is a thyroid gland disorder, and then a condition called eosinophilic esophagitis, which is her esophagus was all of a sudden developing hive allergic reactions to foods,
Wow.
botanicals, fragrances, things she'd been around her entire life, foods that she loved, and all of a sudden were burning her esophagus. And like somebody would walk into the office that she was working at, some delivery driver walks in with Axe body spray and it closes her throat, which is not only very physically debilitating, that's existentially scary. If you think
It's
that
traumatic,
you
yeah.
asphyxiate to death because somebody walked in with Chanel number 5 on or whatever, and all of a sudden it's just attacking your body. So that was so there was the macro part of the story of looking through the pharmaceutical data and looking through patient records as I was doing audits, things like that, and getting the sense that large scale sense of the healthcare system and the pharmaceutical system. And then there's that acute situation, that micro level situation of what my wife at the time was going through.
Yeah.
And she got wrapped up in the system, and I watched her get wrapped up in the system, and ended up being on prescription medications, synthetic hormones, live antibody shots a month to help deal with the allergies. And then there's side effects to the prescription medications. And so then there's supplements for the side effects, but those supplements have their own side effects, but there's supplements for the side effects.
Yep.
For the side effects. That's. I'm like, this
Yeah.
is insanity. Like I just start to see the marketing behind it. It's marketing, it's a subscription model.
Yeah.
Just like Netflix is a subscription model. The if you can keep somebody coming back, if you can cure somebody once, but you can treat them for the rest of their lives.
That's the
Um,
business model. Keep them
it's a
in the
business model,
system. Yep.
and whenever I get into this, I always stop and I say, it's easy to vilify the industry and the people in the industry, and certainly there's memes on the internet about the evil pharmaceutical companies. But my experience is overwhelmingly that the industry and the systems are filled with good people who want to do good things in the world. And this is the best way they know how. This is the best way, the best medicine that they know how to produce is one that reduces suffering. Because again, you sit the patient down and say, John, I don't think what you need is Pilesta. I think you need exercise and to fix your diet, and you need to get some sunshine and remove the seed oils, and that's the very few patients are even going to listen to that. They're going to walk out the door, they're going to go down the hall, and they're going to find the doctor who's going to give them the medication. So there's a demand side to this problem. Don't get me wrong, there's a supply side to the problem as well, but supply meets demand. And so
Yeah.
I always like to remind people of that what I feel, which is why I do what I do and how I do it, is that I can't shake. I'm not going to go on the internet and shake my fist at the pharmaceutical companies. I'm
Right.
not going to show outside the CEO of Pfizer's office in some sort of mass protest of I'm going to talk to people, and I'm going to try to plant seeds, and I'm not going to change the entire country. I'm not going to change the industrialized world all at once, but I'm going to find the people who are open to some alternatives. Those patients who you can actually look at and say, okay, you could go to your doctor and you can get the Pilesta. But just so you know, there's a lot of us who are experiencing some true wellness, some medication-free wellness, some disease reversal, some reversal of aging, some increased testosterone without the pharmaceuticals. And if you're interested, I will share with you what it is we're doing and how it is we're doing it, what we know, what we've studied, what we believe in, and see if something resonates with you. And so that's how I'm
That's
approaching
the
this
way.
problem. I
Yeah.
approach it from the demand side. And again, I'm thinking of like the parable of like the person walking on the beach throwing starfish back in the ocean. The person's like, oh, look at all the millions of starfish. You think that's going to make a difference? It makes a difference to that one. Um,
Mm.
so getting into it, yeah, that's just kind of that's how I got into things like the first experiments I was doing with like high protein, low fat dieting, ketogenic
Mm.
dieting, reducing carbs and sugars, reducing processed foods, and then environmental exposure. Sleeping on the ground in the summer, taking an ice bath, things that I can do to get my body back to ingesting and experiencing and feeling and taking in the foods and the stimuli and the sunshine and the pollen and
Sleeping on the ground in the Arizona summer?
yes, yeah, in my backyard, I was like sleeping. I was just put out a blanket, and Phoenix in the summertime, it never
Yes.
gets below 100 degrees at night.
Yep.
It goes to 120 and then down to 101 and then
Yeah.
120, you know.
And that was
Um,
to help you with the stress response, to show your body that you could get through that, or?
it was just it was understanding that this was very natural. Like
Mhm.
but part of my study that got me into all of this, I was reading. I have two sides to the coin of the books that I'll read, generally
Mhm.
speaking, and that is very new nonfiction. So this is self-help, business, psychology, fitness. We all know it's Joe Dispenza, it's Nassim Taleb, it's
Mhm.
all of that stuff, Tim Ferriss, yeah, all of those things. But then I'll read old fiction, old novels like John Steinbeck and Kurt
Mhm.
Vonnegut and Robert A. Heinlein, especially like sci-fi novels and Americana novels, things like that. And the rule of thumb that I have for those is they have to have first been printed at least 50 years ago, and they're
Mhm.
still culturally relevant. I can still go to Barnes and Noble, and there are any Barnes and Noble in the country, and there are several copies of this book brand new on the shelf, even though it was printed at least 50 years ago. And
Mhm.
this is a litmus test for a piece of fiction that has some sort of greater truth in it. And what that greater truth is, you have to get in the book and find out, because sometimes it's not even the main part of the story. It's just a little nuanced truth, but there's something resonant in it, right? There's something that made enough sense to at least my grandparents, 50 years old or older at this point. I mean, I'm 44, so it's like my great grandparents. Uh,
Mhm.
it made sense to them to keep it into print. And then it made sense to the next generation to keep it into print. And sometimes schools do this because they'll assign the book. But why is the school assigning the book? And then, so if the book is still being printed and being read and taught and talked about 50 years later, there's usually a reason for that. And the thing that I drew from it, these old novels, was how people used to live and how and what
Mhm.
they what they were exposed to. And it's a simple thing. We all realize that the technologies that we have around us are very new. I wasn't thinking about it. I'm like, you know what, this air conditioning that I have, it wasn't here and like fasting, you'll find references to fasting all over in these old
That are
novels because it was
ancient,
just
yeah.
something that people did. Now when I started fasting, and you tell people today, like, yeah, I haven't eaten in 48 hours, they'll look at you like you need an intervention, like you're starving yourself, you're about to you tell people that you skipped lunch, and they'll be like, you're flirting with starvation. Like, no, like fasting has been a long standing tradition in our culture and society. And that's even before that, it wasn't even an option. They didn't call it fasting. Some days you just didn't catch any food.
Right.
Like, this food abundance that we're in is very new. This climate controlled environment that we're in is very new. This digital, that's all the industrial revolution. This digital revolution that we're taking advantage of right now is very
Mhm.
new. And it's not all bad. There's very powerful things that have come from the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, the digital revolution, but there's also externalities. There's side effects to these solutions. And so
Mhm.
what I was realizing was that chronic illness, a lot of chronic illness, which is why we have the most expensive healthcare system in the world, but we're still getting sicker, um, is it's not just a roll of the dice. It almost seems like the healthcare system thinks it's a roll of the dice. Like you show up, you get some blood work done, you've got a thyroid condition, and it's almost like, well, we're sorry, you drew the thyroid condition card. There's nothing that you did to cause this. And I'm like, no, that's not true. Like we're all of our health, our wellness, is a product of our environment, of what we come into contact with. We can come in contact with a virus or a bacteria, and that can affect it. But these chronic metabolic, these where our physiologies are just kind of like going not the direction that we want them to.
Right.
This is a product of the environment that we live in. And so that's what I was solidifying, is this understanding that our lives have become so unnatural. Like, and this is industrial revolution is 250 years old. That's a blink of of nothing in human time. And so I was looking for, how can I get back, at least temporarily, at least on the weekend, to the sensations that my ancestors were feeling, to the temperature volatility, the climate, that my ancestors were feeling, and the food scarcity and the types of foods, and understanding how much food in the grocery store. If somebody from 200 years ago came, in a time machine and walked in the grocery store, they wouldn't even recognize like 90% of it. They're like, I don't know what this is. What the fuck is an otter pop? Like what? like like
Yes,
you
so
know.
much,
Um,
so
and
much
so
truth
like
there. So it
I
sounds like
start
you
to
were
look around and I
trying.
start seeing like a very unnatural environment that has its uses and it's got its plus sides, but it's got side effects as well. And we got to address the side effects. And the way that it seemed more natural to me to address the side effects is remembering for my biology, my genes, my physiology, where I came from, the stuff that I am made of, the stuff that I am evolved from. Like what is that stuff that my vascular system was evolved to respond to, my nervous system was evolved to respond to, my digestive system, my everything. Like how can I wake it up and remind it of these things.
Yeah.
And so this is what got me to ice baths, and then I made an all the time ice bath, and that's a whole nother podcast as well.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so,
Definitely. That's beautiful. We have a lot of similarities in our stories. I saw somebody very close to me dragged through the medical system as well, and that made me wake up and realize, because that person only got sicker and sicker and sicker, that made me wake up and realize there has to be another way. And everything that you say, I so resonate with. So I'm curious about your practices today, currently, with your mental, physical, and now spiritual health, because from what you've told me, getting into this industry, creating these ice baths and the community that's been curated because of that, that's really expanded your spiritual practices and your spiritual knowledge as well.
yes, thank you. And I do the ice baths. People ask me like, "So you in there every day?" I'm like, "No, like it's a routine like any other routine. Sometimes I'm really on it, sometimes I'm really off it. I try to say I get 3 to 5 a week. It gets easier in the summer, because
Yeah.
it's easier to get in because it's like refreshing than it is in the winter. Is it cold, getting into cold, or the sun is not out, whatever.
Right.
So I do that. Do sauna. I don't have like a dedicated gym routine. I walk daily. I walk my dog to coffee. It's about 2 miles every morning. And I watch what I eat. And I do still occasionally do a 24 to 48 hour fast. I was doing one meal a day for a while. I still don't eat. I eat maybe an average of 1.5 meals a day. Sometimes I'll eat, twice a day. Sometimes I'll eat one a day. And really paying attention to what I eat. So like beverages, I rarely drink a beverage that people have not been drinking for at least 1,000 years. Um,
Genius.
so that's water, black coffee, um, and I don't drink alcohol anymore. But it was like red wine. Um, and so like no sodas, no or tea, unsweet tea. I drink a lot of, but these are things that people have been drinking, at least in my
Mm-hmm.
genetic culture, for at least 1,000 years. So they're pretty established. It's not otter pops and the I'm using kids here, but like the juice pouches or the sodas or anything like that. It's not a beverage to me.
Yeah.
Um, so there's that. And I've been getting into more supplements. So I take liver pills, or organ pills, because it's more appetizing than eating like dried liver chips. And yeah, I've been microdosing psilocybin, which has been
Okay.
helpful recently. Yeah, those are my biohacks. Those are my things. It's just staying active. I'm sitting down right now, but I try to stay standing at a standing desk, so I'm not sitting all day long.
Yeah.
Um,
Can we
yeah, those are
talk
kind of.
briefly about how you've seen ice baths and, the breath work or the meditation aspect that kind of naturally comes with that affect your mind, body, and spirit?
Yeah, it's interesting. I say I've joked often that when you start an ice bath company, the ice bath becomes the cause of and the solution to your stress, because you're an entrepreneur and that's stressful. My product is
Right.
an ice bath, so it's like build one, get in one, build one, get in one. That was in the early days.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, the ice baths with the mood, with the emotional regulation, because a big part of what we do in Morale's Code and the company culture is it's not just about getting in the ice and like gritting and bearing it, whatever that phrase is. It's about how you can surrender to it and how you can I can get to a very mindful meditative state sitting in freezing water. And so coupling that exploration of the space between stimulus and response, where that very uncomfortable freezing cold water stimulus,
Mm.
I can control my response, and I can choose to be calm and resonant and emotionally regulated through that process. That has so many other applications outside of the cold plunge. Because then, if you can do that in an ice bath, if you can like control your breathing and be like, nah, I'm good. I'm chilling here for a little bit, sitting in freezing water. Traffic gets easier, difficult conversations, work or entrepreneurship, whatever it is you're working on, all these
Mm.
other stressors in our lives, we start to realize more and more about our ability to choose our responses in given situations and not be reactive. And so that's been a big, powerful benefit to the ice baths. Um, and then
Mm.
other things like exploring psychedelics,
Yes.
which has been a big part of the spiritual aspect of it. I'm still enough of a skeptic to there's always going to be some part of me that's like, okay, if I go into a psychedelic ceremony and I see God, I'm just going to quote unquote see God. Maybe I'm just tripping on some stuff. Maybe it's just a big hallucination, but my pathway to it has been there's been enough for me to at least believe or lean into my own ignorance of saying I can't disprove that whatever that experience is, wherever that place that we go in whatever setting that we're in isn't a real place. It's not.
Mhm.
I mean, we strip off the three-dimensional perspective and we get into that altered state that, yeah, it could just be some weird hallucination because we ingested some poison that humans are ingesting, or you could have found a tunnel to the perception or awareness of things that do exist all around us, within us, that are outside of our perspective, our average perception.
Mm.
And the more you look into it, I mean, it's well known within science that humans can only see a certain amount of the light spectrum. We know that the light spectrum is much wider.
Mhm.
And we know that everything that we're looking at right now only fits the narrow window that humans can perceive. And so we already know and believe and understand on a scientific level that we can't perceive everything that is in front of us, within us, around us, above us, below us. And so, through my own, journey with, meditation and travel and psychedelics and medicines and things like that, I have come to a reasonable enough belief, awareness that I'm only one very small, tiny speck of dust that perceives only one very small, tiny bit of what there can be to perceive. And so that's
Yeah.
been a big part of my journey as well.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Psychedelics have definitely been, I mean, a reason for a lot of my really deep healing. I think the revealing of subconscious patterns and habits and addictions, etc., through those medicines can be incredibly profound. And you said sobriety, and I want to talk about that as well because I know myself personally, as well as many people I work with and people in this space, they're like sober curious, you know, like they go out, they drink, and they never feel good afterwards. And they're like, why do I keep doing that? I want to be sober, but it's so difficult in the society that we live in. And I would love for you to just share a little bit about your personal journey and help to kind of like destigmatize what it means to you and the processes that you've worked through in this new phase of your life.
Yeah. Uh, Alcohol sober. I'm very
Alcohol
explicit
sober.
about that because yeah, I quit drinking. Now,
Mm-hmm.
it's still there's still plenty of other substances that I do. I smoke pot, and both on the the ceremonial side and the revelry, the recreational side, psilocybin and ketamine and LSD and all these other psychedelics that are being used and legitimized in clinical settings and in ceremonial settings. I still party with them, and I admit that. I admit that fully. And for me, it's been helpful because in my stepping away from alcohol, I didn't want to just sit on the couch and not go dancing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to feel like I couldn't go to a party or a bar or a concert or a small music venue. Um, because those are still things that I wanted to do. And so it's been helpful for me to explore the recreational use of other substances that don't leave me hungover, that don't find me occasionally behaving poorly. Because my alcohol use had really gotten to a point where I wasn't behaving right.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, started drinking alcohol when I was a teenager, and then I was a soldier, and so there's big booze culture in the military, and then I was a bartender, so there's drinking. That's a big booze culture as well. I was a drinker. Jason was a drinker, and most of the time, I could at least shut my mouth and not be a problem when I was intoxicated. But it was get to the point where other stressors and things were manifesting when I was drinking alcohol, and wasn't behaving well. And I didn't want to do that. And it was affecting my relationships. It was affecting my relationship with myself. It was affecting my achievement of goals in my business,
Mm-hmm.
affecting my marriage. And I am now separated from my wife, and that's a whole nother podcast as well. We're still great friends and supporters and business partners, but we're walking separate paths right now, both working on our own separate things. And my behavior as a drinker was a big part of that separation, and I admit that. And it's conversations I've had with Adrian, and there's forgiveness there, but it's the truth. Uh, and what has been helpful for me and what has been powerful for me, and I will say that because I don't want to talk anybody, I don't want to seem like I'm talking about any pathway that wasn't right for me, because like Alcoholics Anonymous was not right for me. I didn't even go to a meeting, but I know enough about the program and about people in it and things like that. But I know enough people who are in it, so like that's not going to be for me. Um, and so I don't want to. If somebody is experiencing positive outcomes and results with Alcoholics Anonymous, do it. Like do it.
Mm-hmm.
But that wasn't right for me. And I think one of the powerful things for me is to understand, because again, with these revolutions we've had, digital revolution, the digital revolution gives us connection. We can connect in these micro communities and find different pathways that are resonant to us, that may be resonant to other people. Where before the internet, when I was a kid in the '80s and a teenager in the '90s, especially when I started drinking, it seemed like there were two options: either you drank alcohol or you were an Alcoholics Anonymous. That was kind of your choose it.
Yeah.
Um, and if you quit drinking, it's because you couldn't take it, you couldn't handle it, you fucked up, you're drunk, you're an alcoholic, and you got to go to meetings now.
Right.
And again, if that works for somebody, if that's the culture, if that's the program that resonates with them, that helps put them on a pathway to better outcomes, and do it and keep doing it. But it wasn't that just didn't call to me. And
Yeah.
so understanding and getting connected with, with the fact that there is a thing as alcohol sober, and the joking phrase is California sober. Um, I don't
Yeah.
drink. I do all the other things, but I just don't drink alcohol. Um,
The
and so
things
there
that
are
expand my consciousness and my awareness, as opposed to the things that essentially shut my brain down from positive decision making skills.
Yeah, it can be. And I had a lot of good times, with alcohol, especially younger. And I one of the things that I think about and I'm working on is, drinking wasn't all bad for me. I had good conversations, and I
Yeah.
laughed and I had fun, and I felt better about myself and my own confidence, and that can translate into other social situations, especially if it's, relatively true. We can get to the place where we're drinking and we think that we're being funny and we're just being a dick. Um, but there's a lot of times where it's
Yep.
relatively true, and there were other times that I took breaks from alcohol and friends and relationships. And I'm like, man, you're not as fun anymore. Like, I know you're,
Right.
but again, like, that's the question? Was that the alcohol that was bringing that out in me, or does that live within me and is accessible through either another fun thing, another fun substance to do, or just working on whatever it is within me and my own self reflection and self assessment and self esteem, to have that voice, to speak, to joke, to laugh, to have fun, to dance, to
Without
flirt.
judgment of yourself, right? I think
Yeah, yeah,
alcohol
yeah,
removes that judgment, or kind of that prison that we put ourselves in. And
yeah,
I think the friends, they get so used to the alcohol being the center of the relationship, whether they're conscious of it or not. And so when you remove that, it's like, I don't know you without that, right? I
yeah.
don't know you without this substance, because our entire foundation has been built with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I think about it, and I think what's powerful for me, and I hope is powerful for other people, is to realize that alcohol wasn't the problem. Alcohol was the solution that I found and was using for
Mm.
other problems, and those other problems were self-esteem and self-confidence and being comfortable projecting my voice and putting myself out there, whether it's socially, romantically, sexually, intellectually, whatever it is. There were there are things blocking that. There's still things blocking that. But the alcohol was creating at least a temporary kind of numbness to whatever those blockages were, so that I can move through them. But I'm moving through them now in an alcohol inebriated state. And now the question is, how do I identify those blockages? How do I identify those self criticisms, or those low self esteem, or that low self validation? Move around over through those obstacles in a way that, again, that I am speaking and I am joking, but I'm not alcohol inebriated, and just kind of step into that fullness of my being without the substance. Um,
Mhm.
and so,
Any answers?
what's that?
Any answers to that, without any substance? How to let yourself be free and liberated in whatever way you so
It's
choose?
tough. It is tough. Um, and I think the only thing that I've got right now is just do it. As uncomfortable as it is, just do it, and speak your voice, and have your expression. And the tough part is that it can and probably will um, shift social circles. Like,
Mm.
you will lose friends and relationships and stuff like that, because you are expressing in a different way, or whatever. And it's not just, I think about this about my lot, because there's a lot that I don't say, and there was a lot that I was just bottling up, and I'm not using my voice, and I still have to, like, tell myself, like, Jason, you're not speaking. Jason, you're not speaking your voice. Like be heard. Like, use your voice. Um, and the thing that I think about is like, well, what if I say something that the people around me, my friends, my loved ones, don't like or they judge me for? What if I
Mm,
have an opinion that they're like, the fuck, Jason? But it's a big world out there, and there's lots of different opinions. And understanding and stepping into the fact that if my truth changes my relationships, if my truth changes my social situations, and the people that are around me, then as uncomfortable and difficult as that is probably necessary, at least powerful, to do that. Because if you're just holding back, if you're holding your voice back so that you can stay surrounded by the people who would leave you if you spoke your voice, you're in the wrong group. You're in the wrong tribe. And again, with our digital revolution, our ability to connect like this, we can pick our tribes. Like we're not so beholden to whatever the closest church is to our house, because that's what everybody believes, and
yeah,
that's the only people that we have connection with. We can seek all of these things, and sometimes that goes too. That's a whole other podcast as well, as digital tribalism and how that can have its own. Everything's got a side effect. Everything's got an
right.
externality. But start by being in the room, or the chat room, or the video call, or the video game culture, or the dance place, where your voice is what the people around you or you're connecting is what they want to hear.
It matters. Yeah.
It matters. So that's the
Beautiful.
pathway. And again, like, it's not comfortable. It's not easy. That neither is an ice bath. And so just, just do it. Like, do it.
Yeah, the underlying message is like that is how you grow, right? Through the discomfort, through all of these self-perceived blockages, breaking through them is how you grow, and you ultimately become your authentic self, which is the road that you're on right now. Where you're at in your life is really just trying new things, out in the world again, solo, so sober, alcohol sober.
Alcohol.
Yeah. And there was something that we spoke about last time when we tried recording this podcast a few months ago. And I really want to touch on it because you said some incredibly profound things for anybody that's working through addiction or working through their relationship with alcohol or a substance. You talked about the shame that comes up and the culture that we have around shaming addicts when, in my opinion, I believe we all experience some form of addiction in our lives, some form. And so I'd love for you to open that up again briefly and chat about your personal journey and maybe plant some beautiful medicinal seeds for others.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me of that. And, again, for me, it's powerful. And again, this goes into why I don't stand in a room and stand up and say, "Hi, my name is Jason. I'm an alcoholic." And if that works, again, that's working for you. That's working for you. Do it. Keep
Mm-hmm.
doing it. If it keeps you safe and healthy, keeps the people around you safe and healthy. If it, whatever, do it. But for me, it was important because, again, I don't want to identify with that word alcoholic or drunk or whatever. It has got such a
Addict.
negative addict, it's got such a negative connotation to it. 'Cause again, it makes you feel like there's something wrong with me, or there's something, or there's cultural archetypes for this. You think for me, I think alcoholic, drunk, and I think there's a fat balding man who stumbles home from the gym after the factory job and is just incorrigible and smacks his wife, and the kids are
Yeah.
crying and throwing shit. And this is a real situation. These things happen, but I don't want to identify like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to. I don't want to feel shame for the poor behavior that I have been guilty of, and I don't want to, because I want to forgive myself. Of course, I want forgiveness from anybody that that I want forgiveness from. But I don't want to carry that with me. I'm not gonna put that on my shoulders and carry it around.
Yeah.
I'm making different decisions, and part of making those different decisions is not carrying shame for the decisions that I made earlier in my life. Like, just learn from them. I'm going to do different. I'm going to do better. I can see the ways that that I can do better moving forward. At the time, we do what we do, and we couldn't have done anything differently in that moment. fact that's what we did. I'm just not going to carry that. I'm not going to carry that scarlet letter or on my, or that sign, that dunce cap. So that was important to me. That was powerful for me and has been powerful for me.
Beautiful. And it's all about the subconscious, right? It's like as soon as we identify with something and we say, I am are the most powerful words you can say about yourself. And so you're continuing to put yourself in this cycle of identifying the alcoholic, the addict, the this, the that. And it takes so much longer to remove yourself from the past, to remove yourself from these things that happen in the past, which ultimately is not where you're at right now, which is the present. So thank you for sharing that. And insert microdosing. Okay. I would love to hear a little bit about your journey with microdosing, with mushrooms, and we'll get into more about psychedelics.
The microdosing has come recently, last several weeks, and it's difficult for me to attribute any one thing I do because every day I have is different, and I do different things, and there's so many different variables. So it's hard, and I don't it would be a full-time job sitting down keeping track of what I did today and how it might have reflected. And, a lot of people do. They keep journals about today. I did that, and I just don't do that. But I will say that the psilocybin microdosing seems to be strongly correlated with an ability for me to focus on work tasks and focus on the stressors that I have to respond to in my business and in my drive to grow my business, but to do it without feeling so distressed. So there's two different kinds of stress. There's distress and there's eustress. It's like eustress, eustress. And we can think of the eustress as the usable stress, and the distress is like you're so stressed that you get into a trauma response, like a freeze state or something like that. And so there's a very strong correlation on days that I microdose about 200 milligrams of psilocybin, that the stressors are all there. The company's there, the problem's there, the finances are there, the relationship stuff there, the employees are there. The sales are there, the lawyers, the accountants, they're all there. But my ability to respond to those stressors in a eustress way and get work done and be okay, this is what I need to focus on, this is what I worked on, is very strongly correlated to the psilocybin microdosing. And so that has helped me keep up with that. And it's, for me, 200 milligrams, it's not perceptible. I don't have even a hankling of a perception of any sort of mushroomy kind of, okay, so there's that. It's been a while since I've really done ceremony levels of psilocybin. Times that I've done, that I've eaten a couple of grams here and there. Sometimes I just get really sleepy. The first time that happened to me, it started happening to me, and I kept saying, "Man, mushrooms are making me tired these days. Mushrooms are making me tired these days." And I had kind of this download, I think they call them. One time it was one time I was like, "Oh, man, these mushrooms are making me tired." And I said, "No, Jason, the mushrooms are not making you tired. You are tired. You're working hard. You're building a company." I think at the time I still had a day job too. The mushrooms are not making you exhausted. You are exhausted. Rest. And so, lately sometimes if I'll eat a couple grams of mushroom chocolate or something like that, I end up resting. But I tell myself, Jason, rest. You're doing good. You're working hard. Just go ahead and rest. So that's been helpful as well. And it's not like, the 20s when I'd eat, 5 grams of mushrooms and, that's the whole wild night. It's more just getting to a place of reminding myself to rest and giving myself validation and being proud of myself for the efforts that I am doing.
Beautiful. Yeah. I want to insert kind of the story of what we were talking about when we met. And that was what I like about you and your perspectives is they're very grounded. They're not one side or the other. I think I have a tendency to kind of do that. But when I speak to you, you're very grounded. You're very in the middle. You see both sides, which I really appreciate. And something I'm really trying to illuminate for people with the rise of plant medicine, as they seem to come up in every conversation now, and ceremonies and ceremonial spaces is to look through it without the lens of excitement, but with the lens of discernment and gaining information on where you're going, on the medicine, on if it's right for you, and on the space holders. And you were telling me about one of your adventures into the jungles of Peru, where you were going to sit with ayahuasca, and the knowledge and the new perspectives that you gained because of that adventure. So if you'd like to share that story.
I would. Yeah. So it was a little over a year ago. It was February of 2022. I went down to Peru, and so I get a text message from a friend of mine, and it says, "Hey, we're going down to Peru on this trip. We're gonna spend time with the tribe. We're gonna film a documentary. We're gonna like harvest ayahuasca and like hunt combo frogs and harvest the combo frogs, and it's gonna do this in 3 weeks. Are you in?" And I'm like, 3 weeks? I'm not going to Peru in 3 weeks. Like, are you crazy? But then I thought about it for a day. I'm like, fuck it, let's go to Peru in 3 weeks. And I had sat with ayahuasca once before here in Phoenix, Arizona, which had kind of a wishy-washy experience with. But I was like, okay, now I feel like it's time to do it again. I always said, like, if I do it again, I'm going to go to Central or South America. So it's not going to be, because in Phoenix, it was just in a yoga studio. Yeah, it was like a yoga studio that they covered the windows at night, and it's in the middle of the city. And I'm gonna go to the jungle, and I'm gonna be in the jungle around the plants and the spirits and the animals.
The
And
origin, yeah.
Yeah, the origin, and with and when my friend, I'll call him Ryan, from this one, sent me this message. I'm like, yeah, we're gonna go with the tribe. We're going to the source, right? Yeah. And there's going to be a documentary, so there gets to be some sort of like educational or journalistic endeavor in this. And so I'm like, okay, get some plane tickets to Iquitos, Peru. Which so I flew Phoenix to Los Angeles to Lima, and then Lima to Iquitos. And I looked this up later, and Iquitos is one of, if not the largest city in the world that you cannot get to by car. There are no cars or no trucks in or out. There are only two ways to get in or out of Iquitos, and that's by airplane or by boat on the Amazon River. It's on this like bend of the Amazon River. And so that's where we're going to go. And so I fly to Los Angeles, where I meet up with most of the group. So I get to Los Angeles, to LAX, where I meet up with other members of the group, including my friend Ryan. And then we all get on this overnight flight to Lima that arrives the next morning. And in Lima, we meet up with the rest of the group, including the leader of the group. I'm going to call him Ned. And Ned is from Florida. He's a Caucasian man. But he's the leader of this group, and he's apparently he goes down to Peru and Costa Rica and other like Central South America places all the time. But he's got property, and I learned that he wants to build his own like medicine wellness retreat kind of destination. Like,
Did you know Ned was a Caucasian man going into this?
I don't know that I did. I'm trying to remember what the earlier conversations were. I think Ryan was just like, yeah, my buddy, so, but whatever. So I think I knew he was American. However, that played out. I didn't really know. But we meet Ned, and he's got property, bought property, he wants to do this whole thing, yada yada yada. And in the Lima airport is where I learned that the documentarian, the filmmaker, he's not going to make it, because he got caught up from other assignments.
Right.
But he sent some cameras. They got some cameras, so we're just going to film our own footage for the documentary. I'm like, okay, that's going to become important later in the story. So then we fly from Lima to Iquitos, and we're going to spend our first night in Iquitos before we get in a boat and go down the Amazon the next day. So we fly into Iquitos, very small airport, and they have the little the motorcycle taxis, the motorcycle with the the hooded bench,
Mm-hmm.
tuk tuk or whatever. And we get into a bunch of those, and we drive from the airport into town. And I've been other places in the world. Like I said, I mean I've been to Iraq. I've been to socioeconomically depressed areas. I've been to Thailand. I've been to Costa Rica. I've been to Mexico. I've been to countries that are in the developing state, however you want to look at it. So I very quickly recognized that Iquitos, Peru, is kind of looks like rural Thailand or something like that. Um, it's not affluent. It's very impoverished. We're driving to the streets, and because I am who I am, and I work in the process and in the industry that I work in, I see a lot of metabolic disease. I see a lot of obesity. I see hypertension. I see chronic venous insufficiency. I see varicose veins. I see people who have these maladies of modernity, these maladies of industrial processes and bad foods and things like that. And the ketos is certainly full of it. My experience in Central and now South America has been there's a lot of metabolic disease. There's a lot of poor diet, a lot of other factors that are exacerbating things like obesity and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I see that, and we get to this little hotel, and we put all our bags in, and we're gonna go to the medicine shop. So that we get back into the little taxis, and they take us to the area. We're not supposed to film or take pictures in this area for some reason. I guess it's just a little shady. And we go to this shop that sells basically any plant medicine that you want. You want to buy ayahuasca, you buy ayahuasca. You want to buy, I mean, there's hape all over the place. There's wachuma here, and there's this there, and that there. That's. And Ned is just like stocking up on stuff. I'm like, I thought we were. Like, I'm in a store. I'm in
Yeah.
this is a tourist shop.
Right.
What I thought we were going to go down to where the tribe is. Where's the tribe? Um, and okay, yeah, but Ned's stocking up for the trip. He's got mushrooms and 2 kilos of wachuma and this and that and yada 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 yada. And I'm like, okay. So we have dinner, and then we go back to the hotel, and we get up the next morning, and we go down to the boats, a couple of boats, and we take them down the Amazon, a few miles to the bank to the side. There's this little, I don't even want to call it a village. It's a retreat center. It's called Willie's Retreat Center, and there's a Peruvian man who's there, and his name is Willie. I doubt that's his given name, but that's what everybody calls him, Willie. And Willie's got a family, and he's got some helpers, and there's some bungalows and a main house, and this is where we're going. And Willie is the shaman. He's the curandero. He's the one that's going to take us through. I'm like, okay, so this is the tribe. Willie is the tribe. Okay, Willie is the tribe, and the documentary guy's not here, but we've got cameras, and Ned just stocked up on every plant medicine that he could get his hands on in a shop in a very socioeconomically depressed city in Peru.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going down the river, and we had this local guide with us named Alex, and he's telling us a little bit about stuff. Um, and he says was very important to me. He said that there used to be a lot of logging, a lot of lumber trade here. And this is a bend of the Amazon River, and there's boats. You can get large boats full of lumber through these ports and get them to wherever they want to go. But they're not very active anymore because at some point the Peruvian government stopped lumber exports. And so we can get into this. We can get into again. There's an observation without judgment. I'm not saying we should cut down the rainforest, but the problem was we were cutting down the rainforest. And then the Peruvian government said, stop cutting down the rainforest. We're no longer sending the lumber out of Peru. We will only cut down the lumber that we use inside of Peru. The problem for Iquitos as a city, as a large city, is that was its industry. It was a hub of lumber industry. And when you shut that down, and again, these people they're trapped unless you can get out on an airplane or a boat. Like you can't hitchhike down a road. There is no road that gets in and
Wow.
out. And so then I'm starting to connect dots. I'm like, okay, I see here. This is like shutting down a major factory in a small town in Iowa. It's going to have economic repercussions. When you have an industry, that's how the city grows. And even if the people who aren't directly working in the industry, they're now working in services that support the industry. Every restaurant, every shop, every whatever is now kind of just da 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 da. And you close that down. Like I said, this is observation without judgment. I'm not saying cutting down the rainforest and importing lumber out of Peru is a good idea. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying there's a side effect. You shut that down, and this city that doesn't have a single road in or out of it now has a lot of people there who, like,
Yeah.
what the fuck are you going to do? And so I'm starting to connect dots on alcoholism, on people passed out in the streets, on whatever else, addiction problems, the obesity, bad food, and just kind of
It makes
working it.
sense. Yeah.
And so I'm connecting these dots.
Hey fam, before we get into the episode, I just want to let you know Jason and I had a really long discussion that went for a little over 2 hours. So we are breaking this episode up into two parts. So we are going to dive into the first hour of the conversation. You might receive an abrupt ending at the end of the hour, but just know that that is to leave you on a cliffhanger for next week's episode as we finish up his story. Thank you so much for joining. Let's dive in.